What about push has stayed the same?
I mean, one thing that comes to mind for me is the basic strategy that we started with of blending very place-based work, community development, improving housing, building affordable housing with advocacy and organizing around systemic issues, particularly climate justice issues. I think pretty early on, we understood the deep connection between fighting racism, climate justice, the future of just transition, and really, to your credit, Rahwa and Dawn, like not only has that continued in push, but it's become much more refined, much more sophisticated, much more aligned with national movements. But the basic insight's still there, that we know what's coming in our world, both climate and the turn towards right-wing politics, all of that, I think the strategy anticipated, as well as recognizing that gentrification was an issue in Buffalo and trying to get ahead of that. And I see that's something that we all still do at Push.
Yeah, I think in terms of change, right? Throughout the years, there's been like this spiral of all of these things that we have to do and have to respond to, we have to react to, that we have to prepare for. So there's been a lot of change. And that's a good thing for us. It's a good thing for our communities because nothing ever stays the same. But the through line, even with that spiral, is the people. The people self-determining for them, you know, what they want, where they live. That's our mantra, and we love it because it really, for me, it really lives into what we're supposed to be doing and how we're supposed to support community and figuring out what the solutions are.
Yeah, I think that by design and because nothing ever remains static, you know, things have to always be changing and evolving. But I think what's been really, really critical, what's been grounding is that what's been constant is both the strategies, the values, but also that we are responding to real needs, right? We're not just like, oh, there's this national movement happening, we're gonna do this. Oh, there is this like, you know, opportunity. It's that we listen to the people and then we work with the people to try to solve for whatever that issue is. And what I love about it is I think Push is like very sophisticated and dynamic and understands complexity, but there's such a simplicity to just listening to people and then working together to like figure out and solve the problem. And so you move out of the theory. So yeah, we started a lot with anti-displacement, anti-gentrification theories, and we were learning from other communities that were facing that, where you saw whole communities being pushed out. And so we intentionally put those, what are the strategies that keeps a community here, addresses kind of their current conditions, but also changes the economics for people in real ways over time, that they're not being pushed out. That not only are they part of the solution to rebuilding their neighborhood, but that they will be able to stay in this neighborhood, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, along with that anti-displacement theory, when I think of Massachusetts Avenue 20 years ago, it was a very different place.
Yes.
Physically. The buildings were very run down. There was no strategy for improving the neighborhood, the amenities of the neighborhood, the quality of the housing, getting the lead out of the housing, improving weatherization, the future of energy, solar projects. So all that has changed on Massachusetts Avenue. But I think what I heard you saying, and what I believe, is that we started with the idea that we didn't want the people in the neighborhood to be displaced as part of that change. And so I think, you know, for the most part, we can be proud that we were able to get a hold of enough property in the GDZ and the Green Development Zone up and down Mass Avenue, do the community planning, change the neighborhood, but not change the people, and really have the folks who belonged in the neighborhood, because it was part of the West Side's history to have a diverse neighborhood with lots of folks coming from all over the world, but also lots of folks that had been born in that neighborhood. And that culture survives to this day. And I think it might not have, or likely wouldn't have, if that housing went into developers' hands that were looking more at profit as the main motive rather than community betterment. So something that we can look back on with a lot of pride, I think.
Yeah, I think changing the neighborhood without changing the people is a really important piece. I think about the fact that when I lived on the west side, I can point to like several places because we were always moving. And looking back, I think about the fact that there's a lot of things that look different now in this year, but then as I think back to the houses that were occupied by other folks, and I lived in that house at one point in time, and now there's a new family moving into that unit, and the architecture remains the same. There's multiple family homes, single family homes. The beauty of some of the new builds that we have right now is there, and the weatherization components of it are there, but it looks very similar to the rest of the homes. And I think that's a really good feature to think about over the last 20 years, considering that there's a lot that's been happening. And, you know, we change, we grow, and we also don't throw away the people that are there. I think that's really important, even though there's a lot of change.
I think my favorite thing is that the amount of opportunities and the amount of new levels of skills that exist in that community that I know did not exist there, and that really everyday people are able to make such dramatic things happen. Oftentimes, you know, I think about every campaign that was started and being told, you can't do that. And, you know, it's like, well, why? Why can't we do it, right? And I really hope that this idea really kind of, you know, that's the work that I'm trying to get into now, is how do we scale this? How do we, you know, it's almost like people on the west side were beat down for so long. Like, this is a neighborhood I grew up in. And the difference now is people walk with their chest out. Mm-hmm. You know, people are not walking away from their homes as they did when Push was first coming into formation. They're really reinvesting in it, but also we invested in the people.
Yeah.
And, you know, as I think about what's happening in other parts of Buffalo now, you know, we're always just, you know, it seems very counterintuitive, and you're just like, just invest in the people that are of and from those communities have the solutions. They have the answers. What if we equip them with the resources to begin to start doing that work? And what we have is, again, I think something really beautiful is building on the west side. Yeah, there's some tension. Yes, there's a little bit of displacement happening, but not like mass displacement and gentrification that happens in other places. But what you are seeing is a mixed income, mixed amenity neighborhood. And that when certain, you know, we've had a lot of our immigrants and refugees moving there. I think in the beginning it was a lot of tensions, but now you see them as being part of the beautiful economy. And we also see a lot of new smells and colors and you know, restaurants and other kinds of amenities and new skills that are coming into our community. How do we see that as a beautiful thing to just continue to build on, right? And not as a threatening thing.
So there are so many moments at Push, as we all know, like daily surprises, daily victories or challenges, intense challenges. One thing that sticks out for me is a moment that I'll celebrate was a particular barbecue pretty early on in Push's development. We had finished our first home at 19th and Massachusetts. It was a 3-unit home, 3 apartments. It had been a total wreck, and the project itself was pretty much a disaster in the sense of like a lot of learning. We were learning which contractors to work with, you know, how to incorporate trainees into projects, made a lot of mistakes with the house, spent more money than we thought we would spend. But this was after the house was done. The 3 families had moved into it. There was Carlos and his family. He'd been in the neighborhood his entire life, young Puerto Rican father. There was Zaw, who is a Burmese immigrant, refugee to Buffalo. We had met him on that same street. And then there was Augustine, who was a woman of Trinidadian origin, living in Buffalo alone. And we had this barbecue, and it was super quirky. There were characters from the neighborhood that came. There was music. There was, just hanging out. And I think I looked around and thought, well, this crazy idea of like taking over this house without much experience, bringing the community together to figure out how to get this house done, and then really celebrating what the West Side is in terms of this crazy quilt of cultures, of people, of identities, of histories, and bringing them into community on this vacant lot that was next to the house. Like, this actually might work, is what I felt. And also the way that other community members brought their quirks and talents to that barbecue, and the way that space can create community, that just having access to a vacant lot created community, and also just a kind of a release of all the stresses and things that went wrong in that project, and hard learning moments. It was a beautiful moment for me. And I think just, where I started to learn something that you do get trained in community organizing about, but you don't always practice, about celebration as a way to step back and breathe and acknowledge the work and acknowledge the role that you played in the work. And I think that happened on that day. Now, what happened the next day, who knows? Like, I'm sure something very challenging and not so peaceful. But that's a moment that sticks out for me.
This is a really hard question to answer, because there were just so many beautiful moments. And there were so many hard moments that made you appreciate the beautiful moments even more. I think, but one thing that was, I think, just very, very specific to the work, just because we'd had such a long history of it, was passing the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. But it started with push in 2014. In 2014, sending a busload of mostly youth, about half youth, children and adults, and very intergenerational, to New York City to march for the People's Climate March, which was the largest climate march at that time in the world following Superstorm Sandy. There's some beautiful photos. I mean, Push was just gorgeous. They're wearing all the Push colors, but to see the youth, to see it, the elders and everybody in between. And what I loved is that they marched with the segment that said, "We had the solutions." Over 400,000 people. And from that, the organizers were just like, that was palpable, and we want to keep moving it forward. And so they did a road show. And in 2014, I'll never forget getting into a car with some of our members, young and old, and a couple of staff, and we went to Syracuse. And I remember, we gave them the business, because I did appreciate, we're not joiners at Push. If it feels right to us, we're going to do it, but we're just not going to join. And I remember that was the first time I ever met Eddie Bautista from Nija. And at the end of it, he came around, because we were like, listen, we will do this if it means that people are going to look more like the people we brought, not the old, God bless the gray, old-haired, Sierra Club folks who are also our friends, and we are grateful to them because they've done so many, decades of organizing on climate. But if this is really going to be a real movement, then it needs to have a lot of these youth, and that's who we sent to the People's Climate March. And we sent mostly Black, brown, indigenous, and everybody in between, but working class folk. And Eddie Bautista came to me and he goes, I've been wanting to meet you. I've heard about you push people. It's like, okay. And he goes, you're our people. You need to join this. This is exactly what it's going to be. And it ended up being that. So fast forward, from 2015 to 2019. And what I loved was the week before the Climate Act was passed in New York State, we did a week of actions here in Buffalo. And one of my favorite actions, I will never forget it. And there was a press conference. We had national, folks coming to videotape and what have you, because we kept saying to everybody, when we helped write this policy, we took the example of what's happening in the Green Development Zone because we want this to happen in every community across New York State. That the people that are living in those places, whether rural, urban, suburban, needed to participate in the decision making for what, a climate, how to address the climate crisis, but how to revive our economy, with those solutions, building renewable energy, building more green housing, having, all this workforce and trainees. And so we really put our heart and soul into that policy. And it meant a lot to us, but we did an action, not like we weren't doing a direct action against Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, but we were invited by their office and we were given permission to do this big press conference. And we had our young people on the drums. They were our young street organizers. And we had, dancers, and we had poets, and, we had, of course, the speakers, and we had our signs, and then we had food. And it was just so beautiful. And at the end of that week, we got the news. The people were crying. Like, the work that we do really does impact everyday lives, and that in particular the young people understood and that they were allowed to get emotional. And then it passed. And it just made everything even more. I was like, okay, bring us the drums again, because it just felt like, we'd put in almost 4 years of real hard work. And that was a campaign where we had the most amount of youth participate. I can't tell you how many times we're talking about 12 to 24-year-olds went to Albany on the bus. And if you guys know anything about that, you have to get up at pretty much 1 a.m. You have to get to push by 3 or 4 in the morning. Right. You get on the bus, you do a day of action, you get back on the bus, you'll stop somewhere for dinner, get in on the bus, and you come home. By the time you come home, it's 8, 9, 10 o'clock, and then people don't know this, that most of the staff were jitneys. We have to give everybody rides home. So by the time you come home, it's maybe 11 o'clock, midnight, but it just made every single part of that just worth it, So yeah, that's probably for many, many things, the one that gave me a lot of just pride and inspiration.
Yeah, so I'm really struggling with this one because there's a few different things I want to say that really come to mind thinking about Push through the years. But I keep going back to when I first came to Push and when I came to Push to learn how to organize. And I think about all of the people that were around in that moment and how I didn't know how instrumental they would be in my leadership, and also what we need to fight this long arc fight with National Fuel. So I came to Push when at a time when there was a rate hike and the CEO was getting paid and going to pay all of his C-suite some nice, beautiful, hunky raises. And, there was a training for organizers or learn how to organize and build campaigns out. And that moment, I always come back to that because the folks that were in the room were everyday people like me, just trying to figure out how can we topple this on its head. And even now I think back of, we took the train and we came to this building in downtown Buffalo, and the room was filled, and it was Aaron, it was Eric, it was Whitney, it was Sarah, and all of these beautiful organizers that are like, this is what you do and this is how you organize, because I thought that I was an organizer. And I learned that I didn't have all of the techniques. And then I remember, maybe it's not one moment, maybe it's a combination of moments, but in that, going downtown and actually demonstrating against National Fuel at their headquarters at the time with my family, like that is really what it's all about. And I think about the fact that that is the same cadence that, I've kind of operated and what I promote, like with other people, like just bring the kids, bring everyone who's interested, tell people, and this is how you organize. And this is the difference between maybe shouting out and being frustrated and stewing in your, frustration, and actually taking some steps that really produce a result, right? And I think we saw over the last few years what that result was and what the challenges are, even now. Like as we talk about the fact that we have a bill that an act that we're trying to pass that supports the climate law, that will allow full implementation of it. And who's front and center? Again, the same actors, the same bad actors. So it's, the needing to be encouraged continually in this work, and understanding that it's long arc work, and we celebrate all of the little wins along the way, all of the big wins along the way, and we incorporate the best practices into the next thing that we're working on has really, really stands out to me. So it's many moments, but I keep going back there to the beginning. I have learned a lot over the last 20 years. I think watching you, Aaron, and Eric, and just like seeing the trajectory of like what a movement turned organization can be. And I think for me, I think I've learned to lean into being in community and taking whatever comes with it in stride. I remember, when you were ED, and things would happen all the time that were tense and very challenging. And I think what I learned from you was to make sure to always just lead with listening and make sure not to shy away from, and to just be in space with folks, and to make sure that I had relationship focus, because it was so hard, I think, coming from just all of the harms of the workplace, and making sure that, I had transferable skills coming into the work from both a financial perspective, administrative perspective, and making sure that it was okay to bring my whole heart into the work, and that it's not necessarily binary. So I really learned a lot from you with that. And you, Rahwa, what I learned from you was to lean into my growing edges and not be afraid of conflict. And I think that those lessons still resonate with me on the toughest days as I move forward. Like even in this climate, sometimes it's hard to really stay grounded when you have all of these different threats. We're dealing with like authoritarianism, and actually like seeing the runway towards authoritarianism over the last 10 years, lack of city and state governance that is really real and courageous and holistic. I think that's being able to pan out and look at the whole picture, and then go really granular really quickly, and going back and forth. I think you say a lot, Rahwa, stretch your muscles. And you can't stretch your muscles if you're not willing to pan out, if you're not willing to lean into conflict and be okay with the unknown or the uncomfortable, because that's where the beauty of solution making kind of happens. And I really appreciate that. So that's what I've learned from both of you all.
Thank you. think there's this one story that really sticks out in my mind of deciding to stay at Push because it happened the first week that I was working at Push. And I'll never forget it. Aaron, you were sitting, this where our offices were at 456. And this woman walked in, his is the first desk. She is not very happy. She was quite pissed off. And you're just sitting there and she says, "Who is Aaron?" And we're all like, "What?" Nobody pointed at you, but you're like, "Hey, I'm Aaron." You take off. I think you had your headsets on because we had a tiny office, so everybody had to be on headsets. And she proceeded to really tell you what was wrong. And you were really so gracious. I think that's what I learned is like having this empathy and being able to listen to people. And you assured her, you were like, "Well, we've had these things, we've done this things." And what she was upset about is the lot next to her home, single mom, 3 kids, lot next to her home, that's where the kids played. And now we had just done, several years worth of planning, and there was now a home that was going to be erected in that lot. And I remember, she just was like, I could be doing dishes, I can see where my kids are playing. And you said, "Well, we just renovated Mass Ave Park." She said, "That's too far. I'm not going to walk all over there. I'm a single mom. I'm in school. I work." And you said, "Okay, well, are you a Push member?" He's like, "I don't know if I can do anything about the housing development that's going there because it's kind of too late for that now." You were very honest, but you went straight to organizing and asked her if she was a member and if she had anything else that she needed. And she said, "Well, I could always," she goes, because I'm going to school, I don't have a photocopier." And he said, "You're welcome to come and use this copier at any time." And that brought her down, and you started talking. And you took down her number, you took down her information, said you were gonna get back in touch with her. And as soon as she left, you looked at all of us and I was like, "Wow, are you okay?" And you were like, "Oh, I like her." She goes, "She has a very strong voice. We gotta get her to be a Push member," right? That taught me so much. And it was just like, it just completely oriented me into a different way to Push. It was literally my first week. I don't think I'd been there 5 days yet. And what does it mean to be an organizer in this community?
Yeah.
And it takes me back to some of the moments, throughout the years where we've had these kinds of issues come up. And the thing that I would say to the staff is, I'm gonna go and talk to the person. I said, "Bring me your loudest, most angry person. We're gonna be friends." And I would immediately go, and it made me think of Ellen, who was organizing her community. We needed to get our zoning for the West Side Homes project. And it was during the COVID years. And so I took several organizers that we're gonna go door knocking, we're gonna talk to this neighborhood, but I want the loudest person who's causing the greatest havoc because this person's already organized and they've done half of my job. So if I can get them to be my friend, I will have an organized community. And sure enough, went and talked to Ellen. And I kept telling her, I said, "I hear you, I don't know what I can do, but I'm willing to continue." I said, "I will bring everybody, we will have a conversation because we're so far into our planning, but the things that you were saying make good sense to me. Let's see what we can do." And she, quite, of course, and I kept saying, "We're gonna be friends at the end of this." She said, "We'll see." She said, "You know what, you sound good." I said, "I'm more than that. I'm gonna be a person of my word." And sure enough, a couple of weeks went by, we met with the neighborhood, we did make changes to our plans. They were really good changes, but when I got there, she had a clipboard with 75 names and phone numbers. I said, "Can I get a copy of that?" She said, "Yes, you can." And that's how we stayed in touch with that community and made some changes. But it really was that, fast forward, 9 years after the fact is when that happened, was just something that's always stuck with me.
And if I can, that still reverberates even today, because my memory, most recent memory of you carrying that forward was when we were in the process of getting the Sustainability Workforce Training Center off the ground. And you might remember we had issues with, or our community had a couple of issues with us, with the lot that was next door, the training ground that was there. And then there was a house that needed to be demolished, and the members of the Arkansas street, or Arkansas, depending on how you call it, folks have their different ways of pronouncing it. They were upset because there was some drug activity, there was sex work happening, and not all of it was we had any control over it. It was just really securing the site and making sure that there was work happening between the council member, David Rivera, and the police district, D district. And folks were like calling us, emailing us. And one of the first things you said was, hey, let's have a meeting with them. And, there was, one or two people who were really angry at us, and they were like, we want to speak to who's in charge. And you said, hey, let's bring them in. And I remember our housing director was kind of like, I don't know if we want to do this. Why would we bring them in? And I just sat back and I thought, I know why we're bringing them in. But you brought them in, and we had this circle in our conference room and brought resources too, like really identify like, hey, this is bigger than us, and we need to bring in people who can also support the conversation moving forward. So everyone wasn't there that was going to be part of the solution, but you set the table, and they felt that. And even the anger and the frustration as folks were talking about their issue, I think they kind of realized that, oh, this is bigger than just like this property owner next door. Who talked to, the councilman? Who's talking to the police district? What do you need support with? And you were very, very specific about what we could do and what we couldn't do. And also like, hey, we're here and we will support you in whatever way possible. So offering up to that community resources, like we'll help you form a block club to have more strength, and we'll support you. So it's not just the members of this community that's standing alone. We're standing behind you as an entire organization really meant something. And I think that's something that we also carry forward to this day. Like, we are going to meet with you and we're going to support you and figure out what we need to do, what we can do, and be very honest about what we can't do. And I think that resonates a lot, and it means a lot to me even going forward. Like, hey, we're doing that, and we're going to keep doing that into the future, because that's what's really important.
Yeah, I appreciate you actually mentioning that, because I think it goes to another thing that pushed us is like, we are there in collaboration with so many
Right.
other organizations. We do certain things, but we also, when the home ownership piece kept coming up, well, Homefront was there, Habitat was there, so we're going to collaborate with you, partner with you, right? And so we did carry that work forward, Aaron. And so when this happened, where, we were dealing with the drug epidemic issue, which is not something that we did. So what we ended up doing was we partnered with Best Self, Behavioral Health, and another organization that was doing training, and trained the push staff,
Right.
and the community members that formed the block club that were really interested in addressing this issue, because people were dying in the streets due to overdoses. So they taught us all how to use Narcan, and also to understand this community. And so we were all like in a learning posture with the community, but also we need additional resources to come in here, and that it was and we understood then that it was actually part of a much larger problem that I think, having been on the West Side, has always existed to a certain extent. But it also had to do with folks not having jobs, being unhoused, other kinds of issues that were coming up that, again, we are part of that solution, but we need the other folks that are also providing some of the direct services to come. And that was a time.
That was a time.
Dawn, what I really appreciate and deeply admire about you is the real rootedness in your personality and your being that you bring to the work. And when I try to understand where that comes from, I know like you have a deep love of literature, of culture, of your community. You're a Buffalonian through and through. And it comes through in the quiet but very deliberate way that you move. It's not about ostentation or display. It's about strategy and deliberateness and tactic and really understanding how all these systems come together at the neighborhood level, and moving with power but without a real sense of ego. And I think that means that you're able to build culture because you have a culture that you have through your life and through your study. And I think concretely what that I've seen that do for Push in your tenure is building teams of leadership. It's taking our strategy that Rahwa and I developed over the years and really embedding it in the consciousness of people that work with you, both at the community level and on staff. And when I hear your public leadership, the way you speak, the way you deliver the message, I can hear all those layers of your life in your message. It's not a mission that you had to like figure out how you related to or come to from sort of an outsider's standpoint. It's something that you've studied over the course of your life. I think both like through intuition, but also through very like scholarly ways that you study. And that comes through in a very like, I guess, organic, all these words maybe get overused, but like a very natural way of leading the community forward. And I'd like to say, Rahwa, what comes to mind, a lot comes to mind, but like, I remember when you were first on staff or getting involved with Push, like the insane number of like acronyms and policies and ideas, and again, I think of Eric's mind and my mind to some extent too, and just the way that organization had developed with energy policy, housing finance policy, food policy, the history of racism and classism. Like these are extremely complicated histories and terminologies and ideas, and like you would synthesize them like on the spot. I was like I don't get how this mind works at that speed. Like I don't have that capacity. I know pieces of this history, I've studied a lot of this, but the way you could take these very complex ideas and synthesize them and then restate them in ways that could be communicated to all our constituencies, from the block level, the folks, at that time on Grant Street that would wander into our community center, to meeting with the foundation people in New York City, the people that have the resources that we need to connect to our community. The way that you could reposition that message in that quick synthesis to whomever we needed to communicate it to move forward. I think it was something you brought to the organization. I think it's a talent. Again, it comes from, again, sort of your own intuitions, your own life experience, but then just this ability to study, synthesize, and reposition as needed. And I think that has taken the organization to new places. The focus you have now on replication and thinking about how that local work that we've done really does relate globally is something that's like ultra strategic and ultra necessary for the world. And, I don't think too many people could do that. So thank you.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to say about you, Dawn, is first of all, it's so interesting to me how we like grew up in Buffalo in very similar spaces, knew each other like many moons ago. And of course you had left and came back, and we were in such different parts of our lives. And then we reconnected at Push, I think the same year. Like I started working and then you came on not too long after I did. And then like just how everything was evolving very, very quickly, and the evolution of even just the roles the multiple roles that we all played at Push. But I think what I love about you is, you said the growing edge piece, so I have to bring this into it, is I think everybody around you could see who you were before you could see you, and having to I was like, oh, you just need to be challenged? okay. But then you would always surprise me because I'd be like, oh, she doesn't want to do this. And you're like, you didn't ask me. Of course I want to do it. I'm like, oh, my bad. You're right. And how you would step into that. Or I think, more than me sometimes because I will move, I love your thoughtfulness. Sometimes I would say, I really need you to do this. I think you can do those things and I need you to level up. And you're like, I don't know. I'm like, I do. And then you would go and you would think about it and say, you're right, I'm ready, let's go. And then go. And I think I really just admire that about you and really love it, because I think once you commit to something, you're 150% committed. There's no turning back. And I think I just so grateful because it helped me so much in my leadership, because I can always depend on that.
What I see for Push in the next 20 years is the ability to really fulfill our ultimate role, which is to have community control and community ownership. I see all of our housing developments coming out of like a landlord-tenant status into more of a cooperative home ownership model, or maybe independent home ownership models. I see us experimenting with different types of home ownership, different types of relationships with other folks across not just the city, but across the country, in a way that really deepens our commitment to a holistic approach to everyday solutions. And I also think about the organizers' creed to work ourselves out of a job, to work ourselves out of existence in the same way that we were. I see Push as a continuing steward and champion for what needs to happen in any given moment, and that it can change at any point in time. I don't know if we'll always do affordable housing development, but I know that we will always be People United for Sustainable Housing. We will always be the people who center the people most impacted. And I think the square that we should stand on moving forward is to be, in the words of the great Rahwa G, to be as nimble as possible and be ready at any given moment for what that could look like. So, I think to predetermine right now what Push will be in the next 20 years is a little bit of a stretch, but rather I think making sure that we have, my goal is to make sure that we have a stabilizing effect on the movement, a stabilizing effect on our communities, and to continue to be able to build upon that as we need to. And that could mean different things, right? Like even in this moment, I see us as being the anchor for a lot of communities, because everything is under threat right now. And so does that mean that we might maybe look back to our days of the mutual aid hub? But it might look different. It should look different because it's not, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so there's a short-term goal, I think, that we'll have to, establish as the moment, emerges. And I think the long-term is, hey, we are living into our community governance. We are experimenting with what it means to, when we say in our communities, this is what we want, then it becomes policy, it becomes a law that can be implemented, it becomes something that can also be accountable by the community. And that's not something that we have like in place consistently across all of our communities, but it is something that I think is achievable with the right circumstances and with us still being around and holding the line. So that's what I see. Yeah.
So what I see is really what Dawn's vision and the way you just stated that vision, I can't really improve on it, in part because you are our leader, but more importantly, it's just the eloquence and the way that you put all those pieces together. I do see new challenges that come from the state of our world and come from many of the dynamics that we've been aware of for the whole entirety of PUSH, the intensification of climate change, what that means in terms of climate refugees coming to Buffalo, how we incorporate that into our sustainable housing mission and our commitment to working with working class communities and keeping them in place and embracing Buffalo's need to grow while not displacing our own people is going to be very challenging. The fact that both Dawn, you, Rahwa, are like spending a lot of time thinking about that and anticipating those challenges is really the best shot we've got at being ready for them. So I'm grateful that, Rahwa, you stuck in that world and remain very committed to the future, and Dawn, you, the day-to-day leader of that future. But it's going to be challenging, and so is our authoritarian reality, that we know is very intertwined with that climate change and the death of the petroleum economy and how all that's coming together. I don't think it surprises any one of us, but we know it's going to be a very big challenge to move through it.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, both of you. I agree wholeheartedly with you, Dawn, and that vision, and I think you, Aaron, naming the challenges that are very real. And we are, at the moment, in a real crossroads. And so I will just say that what I see in the future that I hope we will be living in, is that, it's as much for PUSH Buffalo as it is for the entire city. What I've always believed about the city of Buffalo is that we have everything that we need to be an example to the world of what a truly livable, equitable, thriving, resilient, multicultural community could be, because we have all of the ingredients to make that happen. And the muscle memory that PUSH has, the muscle that is built, needs to be duplicated in every part of Buffalo, with also some new technologies and new ways that, like, practicing those same sort of values, the strategies, the tactics that PUSH has been practicing with for so long, and practicing them in other parts of town, and then taking the assets from, there's so much, all I see is nothing but huge potential, huge opportunity, incredible talent, incredible beauty, that if it can be applied, is actually the direct response to authoritarianism.
Exactly.
But we have to focus on, again, having that multicultural thinking about being in right relationship with the earth, with the natural world around us, our communities, and the people, and being welcoming to that, including any climate refugees that will come from inland US or from other parts of the world. We have enough that we can share with others to help us revive and rebuild our economy. And we have enough natural assets to accommodate that as well. But if we go into a scarcity mentality and not abundance in this moment, what is going to happen is that we're going to try to hoard those resources and push people out. And that's how civilizations die. Mm-hmm. And so, I think it is, but what keeps me in Buffalo, what keeps me in this work is, like, obviously incredible leaders like the two of you, that I can learn from, be inspired by, conspire with, but also, like, when I look throughout the entire community, no matter what part of Buffalo I go into, is that there's just, like, so much magic that is inherently rooted in the people and in those places. And so, I want to want to work towards that. And I believe it wholeheartedly, like in every fiber of my bones.
Exactly.
I think one thing I just want to lift up an appreciation about Push is, Aaron, when I first met you, and I was working somewhere else and I heard you speak, one of the things that you said was that if an organization is going to continue to innovate, you have to have leadership transition. And if the leader of an organization stays in an organization too long, especially if you're the founder, the organization begins to take on the personality of the leader. I've refined that some, be careful of charismatic leader. I think we're all very charismatic, so we don't want to stay on too long, right? But that is something that I think, embedded in the organization. I think I've certainly picked that up and given it to Dawn over the years. And so, I think one thing that I know is going to happen at Push is there will be many, many leaders. It's a leaderful organization. It is an opportunity, where, for me, what it meant to me to be the executive director at Push was just an opportunity that I don't think I could have experienced anywhere else in Buffalo, for an organization that is very much rooted in place, but is known nationally and internationally. And to grow that, I don't think very many immigrant, refugee, Black women could, work in, are given opportunities to work in such a dynamic organization. So I'm incredibly grateful because it taught me so much. But that vision of leadership transition was always just very, very present in the organization the whole time I was there. And there are many leaders, not just the executive director at Push, by the way. There's so many different ways to lead at Push, as a member, as staff, as board. And so one of the things that I hope that we can all carry forward in that leaderful movement is that we don't lose the ethos and the essence of who Push is, which is this idea of creating true equity and deep democracy. Meaning you take it from community control to actual community ownership. So that's what I hope is gonna continue to evolve through the years.
Yeah. To the point of leadership, I think that's a really good way to talk about how folks can be involved. We learned a lot over the last 20 years about leadership, about community engagement and activating and moving folks from where they are. I think over the last 5 years, and in particular in this moment, we know that we can't afford to keep people on the outside, and we do have to do a lot of work to engage people and bring them in closer. And I think that's the opportunity with leadership, to lead by empowering and providing the supports for other people to pick up the mantle, because the organizer's creed is that you organize yourself out of a job. And I think it's really important, to your point, if we're going to innovate, if we're going to be creative, if we're going to be able to respond in the moment, that we have multiple points of entry into our movement in the same way, in our organization, in the same way that we think about the movement, meeting people where they are. And so, one thing that I've been saying a lot lately that, I'm hoping is resonating with other people is, it doesn't matter where you are, come in, because you could be doing something really small. I don't care if you're answering the phone and we think it's minor. You could be cleaning toilets. You can be a person that's coming in to support our work in community by doing the least amount of effort, but have the greatest impact. So someone that might want to come and they might say, oh, well, the grass needs to be cut, or, we want to plant a flower bed. We had someone that looked at one of our properties and they were like, oh, I think it would be beautiful if daffodils were here. Do you mind? Yes. And I think that spirit is what we need to continue to foster moving forward, because you can be a donor, you can be a supporter, you can be a push member, you can be someone that's just on the fringe and they're like, hey, I think that what you said was powerful, and can you come and talk to our team, our leaders, our youth at, the Grant Street Neighborhood Center, and help talk through what it is that made you get involved with Push. And that is a seed that just kind of spreads and flowers in different ways through the years. And I think that's how we move forward in the future. And even from an internal perspective, like leadership pipelines all over the place, not just from a staffing perspective, but also from a membership perspective. Right now, we're in a moment where we're taking the opportunity to really look at the landscape and see where the soil is fertile for folks to get involved. And I think that's exactly what we should be doing. And the only way that we can really do that well is if we're having those conversations. Are we having one-on-ones? Are we having tough conversations with each other when it seems like we might be off of alignment, when it seems like we were always in alignment? And are we having hard conversations where, we can't agree on each and everything, but we have one point of alignment on this particular issue? Immigration, we have one point of alignment on this particular issue. The gas bills are too damn high. What is it? And wherever that is, that's where we hang our hat, and that's where we dig in deep. And I think that's how we keep moving the needle towards the world that we want to see.
So for me, when it comes to thinking about the future of Push and how to get everyone involved in the different constituencies, I really like Dawn's idea of the leadership pipeline for all the different roles, whether you're a youth in the youth center, or a youth worker working with the youth, or a donor, or someone in the finance department doing the accounting. It seems to me that we all need to step up, and we all need to be in a mode of learning about organizing, learning about power, learning about culture of organizations. And a part of that is something we know, is that the precariousness that the last phase of history brought to working class people, people of color, immigrants, refugees, that's expanding to whole new sets of people as the crisis intensifies, whether it's climate, whether it's late capitalism and how shady and unstable things are. I think there will be a whole set of new people who realize it's not that I'm insulated from that. I'm feeling it. It is my direct interest to figure out what this whole organizing thing is. I'm not just gonna, write a check. I'm gonna realize, I gotta step up. And so I think in some ways that's gonna run its own course and determine that we're gonna see more people looking for answers and being ready to provide those and provide entry points, and leadership development will be crucial.
Yeah, I think also just making sure that we're encouraged, for those of us that have been involved in a while, making sure that we keep our minds and our hearts open for opportunities for folks to be able to engage, or at least that's the challenge that I see, is to keep that openness, because it's so easy to get kind of entrenched into your day-to-day that you forget to pan out. And also, like, encouraging folks, like, no matter where they are, to go get your people. Whoever you consider your community and your people to be that you're in space with, go get them and bring them back to the table. Help to, evangelize, so to speak, about what it is that needs to happen in order to produce the change that we want to see. We saw thousands of people in downtown Buffalo that we had never seen before, about a month and a half ago. And these were not the folks that, I heard our organizers say that they had one-on-ones with, or that they had shared space with at all. These were, aunties and uncles and grandmothers and grandfathers, suburban and rural. And you kind of lean your head to the side and you say, where's the opportunity here? And how can we lean in a little bit deeper? How can we challenge ourselves in our thinking to not be so isolated and thinking, oh, it's just about the people who are in the city that are impacted? How is the impact hitting them? Even if we have our own opinions about it, or we have facts backing like why things have happened the way that they have and why folks are showing up now. Go get your people, bring them back to the table, engage in debate. Don't be fragile, don't be scared, don't be intimidated. Come to the table and ask questions, ask hard questions, ask curious questions, and then put your hand to the fire,
Yeah, I think I love all of that. I think you're both 100% right, and I think having a leadership pipeline is really important. And I think what I'm been feeling lately too, and I think it's because of the current circumstances, that we need to imagine new ways, and I see that as a beautiful thing. And I think it's taking the core of organizing, the core of base building, the core of how we're thinking about policies and laws. But really, I think it goes back to what Dawn said earlier around the governance piece, is that we are in fertile soil. We're in fertile soil to imagine all the different possibilities, but it does take hard work and it takes consistency. But I am heartened by a lot of the energy in Buffalo right now, where there is just a lot of incredibly brilliant, hardworking, open, imaginative young people, really from all sectors. So I think, coming from a cultural background, I think it's really, really important to center more of some of that skills that is already bubbling up, and expanding the people to include more young people.
Yeah.
But there's also like the wisdom of our elders. So Dawn is a big believer of this. I 100% agree with it and love it, which is building intergenerational spaces. And I think what gets me excited is creating the containers for people to come together and see what new possibilities are kind of ripe for planting and harvesting in the next couple of decades.
Yeah, and trusting that, even though I think one thing we've done well, and I probably should have said this earlier, but one thing we've done well at Push is trusting the process, because it's messy.
Yeah.
It's always going to be messy, and it's always, I'm a gardener and I like to get my hands dirty, figuratively, actually. And when you think about soil, and it's ripe for what? It's ripe for seed planting. It's ripe for, all of those things. And I think that we can, get a little shy when it comes to messy work, but that is where the beauty emerges in it. And also, recalling from that act of doing things with our hands and getting our hands dirty, that is not something that we created. We're iterating from Afro-Indigenous practices that really, if we were to peel back and go back to some of those things and see what new technology comes from that ancient indigenous practice, we will be able to iterate, and we'll be able to build something new and come up with possibilities. But it all kind of starts with having an open heart and open mind to be able to be creative, Yeah.